Baltic Brand Talks, podcast about all things creative and trending.
Hi everyone, this is ANDRIS and this is Baltic Brand Talks podcast. Today I'm going to share an amazing interview I had with ANDY PEARSON, Vice President of Creative at Liquid Death. And we talked about the amazing success Liquid Death has had over the last 5 years since they were launched, and now has become a unicorn and the fastest growing water brand globally. And so, with Andy, we talked about what's his background and how did he join the team and how the Liquid Death brand was born, and what are the do's and don'ts for entering entertaining content they create day by day, and other principles, what they believe in, act like a character, not a brand. One example from those principles that I found really astonishing and useful, thinking about our own work with brands. So we discussed all kind of interesting experiences, what Liquid Death has enjoyed and had, and also a couple of struggles. And I really recommend to listen to the full interview, which will be close to 1 hour, full of jokes and great thoughts from Andy. So welcome. The Baltic Brand the forum team were happy to have you last September in Tallinn as one of the keynotes, talking about the Liquid Death, the brand you represent. You are the creative vice president in Liquid Death. But before we start talking about Liquid Death, what about your background and how did you join the Liquid Death team? Maybe you can shortly talk about.
Where do I begin? No, my background, for about 13-ish years, I would have been at ad agencies. So I went to the Creative Circus, which was a portfolio creative school in Atlanta, Georgia, here in the US. And then from there, I was lucky enough to end up at Wieden & Kennedy, and did a brief stint there. Ended up getting offered a job, but then laid off the following day, which is another crazy story, which I won't go into because that's a long story. But and through that process, I ended up at Crispin Porter Bogusky, kind of at the heyday when Crispin was doing all the iconic work for Burger King and Microsoft and Domino's and all, agency of the decade, won all the Cannes Lions and everything. I happened to be around for that period. I'm not taking credit for any of that. I just happened to be there and learn from some of the best. And our founder and CEO, Mike Cesario, was also there at the time. I actually ended up, I think, probably meeting him my first week there. We were kind of early on in our careers and just happened to cross paths and, didn't think too much of it at the time. And then I ended up, kind of cut my teeth at Crispin for about 5 years, really just learned from some of the best in the world, and then went on to have a number of other jobs. At a certain point, I ended up leaving to freelance with my wife. We quit our jobs and actually traveled the world for about a year, just without much of a plan other than trying to freelance. Actually, as part of that, I ended up in Tallinn for a brief period. We took an excursion over to Finland and Estonia and all that. And and kind of through that process, I ended up connecting with Mike as he was kind of just the idea of Liquid Death was sort of gestating, and he eventually quit his own creative advertising job to do Liquid Death full time. And after maybe kind of 2 years of the brand doing that, he was doing a lot of the work himself. I got a text out of the blue because I had been kind of freelance helping him at his agency job, and I got a text out of the blue that was like, "Hey, is this still your number? What are you doing? I might need some help." And and so that was about almost 3 years ago. It was actually about almost exactly 3 years ago, and that's kind of how I landed.
Were you the second employee of Liquid Death?
No, certainly not. No, there were plenty of people. I was probably employee 50 or so. I mean, we have, and it's a business, so we have people that have to, do operations, and we have amazing salespeople and all that. There was a bunch of infrastructure there, but the marketing team at that time was relatively small. Yeah.
Yeah. So for this 1% of people who still doesn't know what liquid death is, can you shortly, tell the story of it and how it was born and how it has grown into the world's fastest growing water company in the world?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you are the 1% at this point, you're probably pretty confused. But yeah, Liquid Death, we're a healthy beverage company. I mean, the idea was that, it really started from an advertising creative insight, which was all the best brands that everyone makes the most fun work for and wants to work on and win all the awards are all like the beer brands and the candy brands and the fast food, junk food brands and energy drinks and all this crap. And the real idea was, what if we just took all of that energy and that excitement and that fun and humor and put it against something that was actually good for you? Because there you go. We've got mine here too. Yeah, because it's like, the healthy food industry, it has just traditionally been pretty boring and talking to the same people over and over again. And so the idea was really, can we help people if they want to replace alcohol, or cut down on energy drinks or soda, or maybe just drink more water more often. So yeah, the idea was put water in a can, make it look like beer, have fun with it. And then on top of that, we're also replacing single-use plastic bottles that bottled water would normally come in with infinitely recyclable aluminum cans.
Yeah, and the water, that was how you kickstarted, probably, to make it like the most extreme, ends of this, super pure, healthy beverage, and this very kind of funky design and can. And I still have to get you, like my brain is still saying there's something wrong, because if you open this type of can, it can be just water, right? And now you're expanding the range, and it looks like there's a lot of potential also in other kind of liquids, let's say.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I find drinking out of a can way more enjoyable than drinking out, a cold can. It actually, scientifically, it tastes colder when you drink it. So it actually, I think it's a more satisfying experience just drinking water out of a can like that. But yeah, so from there we have flavored sparkling water, which has just 20 calories per can. So it has a little bit of sweetness, so it has a little bit more flavor than just kind of a standard flavored sparkling water. At least here in the US, they all tend to be, it's like 0 calorie, but there's this meme that it was like, it tastes like if someone whispered the name of a fruit in the other room. Is what these other brands taste like.
You can almost feel it.
Yeah, it's like, you're like, oh, I guess that is sort of lime flavored if you close your eyes and focus hard. So they're a little bit more flavorful than that, but still very low calorie. But so a lot of people now are using them to replace soda. If they drink soda, every day, they've gone from 150 calories or 200 calories down to 20 calories in a can. And then we also have a line of iced tea, which is very popular here in the United States. But it also tends to be very sugary. It has massive amounts of caffeine. And so we've taken that, ours are a fraction of that. So again, it's the same idea. It's giving you the same thing, but it's making it much healthier. So we see it really has a healthy beverage platform on the product side. And then from the branding side, from marketing or whatever we want to call it, it's just an entertainment hub. It's an entertainment platform, and we really look at it from the marketing side. I have to kind of almost believe that we're an entertainment brand that happens to make healthy beverages, right?
Yeah, it sounds a bit like Red Bull, which probably started a very different way. How they become kind of these extreme sports, content creators who happens to sell energy drink. But in a way, it feels like there's a bit of similarity in approach, that you are not focusing on the product features so much as you are, trying to build the community and kind of really build the brand who means much more than the product itself.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What does an energy drink have to do with jumping out of a plane? It's
in a way, not much.
Yeah, right. So they've linked it. I mean, what does water have to do with humor? Not much, but we've kind of built excitement around this thing that, again, like going back, traditionally was just kind of ignored, and all bottled water and even healthy beverages all have this very sameness to them.
Yeah.
And on top of that, again, going back to the sustainability thing, it's like the thing that I get angry about, actually, when I think about it, is water has always been marketed. The reason why, when they were originally looking into just making the brand at the beginning, the idea was to make it look like a beer, put it in a can. And then it was like, well, why does everybody put it in plastic bottles? And then you dig into it, and it's really all about the marketing, right? It's about the purity. All bottled water it's like pure from the mountains.
Spring water. Yeah.
Yeah, even if it's like tap water out of, whatever, it's sort of about this purity and the cleanliness and all that. And so, of course, in order to prove that it's pure, you have to see it. So you have to put it in a bottle that's clear, which, in some places is glass, but more often and more becoming plastic, right? And then so you think of all the millions and millions and millions of tons of plastic waste that's been generated because no one said, like, hey, what if we didn't put it in a plastic bottle? What if that wasn't our marketing strategy, right? And no one had even bothered to question that or tried to do that. So it kind of gets me like a little angry when I think about that.
So the death to plastic, it's one of the kind of these core messages that you've been sharing since the birth of the brand, and I think it kind of really makes you also not just the entertainment company. It makes you also the fighter for the more sustainable future and the climate change as well. So do you also think you want to expand also there? You want to, I don't know, recycled old cans and make, I don't know, a new brand called let's say dry life next to liquid death? Or do you feel there's also a lot of potential in the sustainability aspect, how to develop the brand in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, we're just getting started, and I think there's so many that see what we're doing, and they're like, yes, a brand that is okay with laughing at itself, with laughing at other things, with giving me healthy choices, but not making it preachy, right? That's our thing, is a lot of these, again, they're doing great work, but how many sad piano PSAs can you see that you just start to, shut them out? How many facts do you see that it just starts to wash over you and you don't notice, right? So for us, it's about approaching this issue with some levity, and the thing I always say, it's like, if you can make someone laugh, truth is the basis of humor, right? And so in order to make someone laugh, the two of you have to agree that something is true, and you both see that, and you both have this connection and can laugh. And so for us, it's like, if you can make somebody laugh, you've already made a deeper impact than almost any other way you can make it, right? Because you're sharing a moment versus being told something and being told that you need to do something or the world is on fire. And so it's just it's a very sneaky approach. I mean, it's a more impactful approach that people haven't tried to take before. And I think that's why it feels exciting and refreshing. I heard it really succinctly put, actually my kind of partner in a lot of stuff, my VP of marketing that I work with closely with, he said, liquid death is an evil plan to make the world healthier and more sustainable. And I really like that sort of succinctly,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, the power of humor, it's a theme that we want to talk a lot more in this year's Baltic Brand Forum. So thanks for this very kind of already encouraging also thoughts that you have. And I think Liquid Death is really the brand that not just talks about humor, but really puts it in a very good use.
Yeah.
And also, you have been talking previously about the kind of advertising humor and the real people humor. Can you expand a little bit on this? What do you think about it? And also, when Liquid Death is creating content, like what are some of those do's and don'ts that you have in your checklist?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, and I say this having worked again at ad agencies making work for years and years and years. But there's a really big difference between advertising funny and actual funny. And I think funny is really hard, and it's why people don't do it, right? Because it does, even now in this job, I've been here almost 3 years. I've learned so much. I feel like I've been to like comedy boot camp in a way. I didn't come into this feeling like I necessarily had all these comedic skills, but I've learned them over time. And the only way to learn them is to do it repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly, and test and look at what works and get feedback and try again. And it's why doing stand-up comedy is literally, you have to go do open mic nights and do it in front of a crowd of 5 people and fail 20 times and succeed 1 time, and then you learn from all 21 times, right?
Yeah.
And so with us, we are constantly trying to make work, putting out stuff as quickly and often as possible, generally speaking, because it's kind of us workshopping and learning and trying stuff out and seeing what works. And so what I'm getting at is, it's not the marketing industry's fault that it's not funny that often, because what happens is we do these like big integrated campaigns that take months to build, and we get hundreds of thousands of euros that get sunk into these projects, right? And they, over time, the edges get rounded off, and it takes time to do it, and eventually it comes out of it, and there's 3 commercials and like a billboard or something like that, and that's all you get to make, right? And it's just sort of the way that marketing campaigns are structured, and they're not this sort of like iterative, try things out, mess up, try it again, do something different, learn from it, make it funnier, right? And but so it kind of breeds this humor that's like, you're like, wow, that's a funny ad. And you should want it to stop at, wow, that's funny.
Yeah.
Not like
Yeah.
an ad, right? And so
Or it's funny for the ad. I mean,
right. You're like, oh, that's it's like beer commercials are funny. Kinda. Like, they're funny ads. They're funny advertising, but they're not something that you generally are laughing at. But I'm heartened. I think Cannes this year added a humor category in almost all of the categories, so which is pretty interesting. First time they're doing that.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Hopefully there's a more emphasis on it. People want it. It's just it requires a lot of changes on both sides of the equation, on brand sides of people letting go of things a little bit and being okay with trying something, and maybe doing stuff that doesn't appeal to everybody or might even offend somebody a small point, right? And
But you can always, do a hate song recording.
Yeah. The problem is because the internet exists, someone will always be offended and someone will always be able to talk about how they're offended, right? But our human brains are wired where we will latch on to the one negative comment and miss the 100 other ones that love us. It's true. I mean, it happens all the time with me. I like you see somebody, all these people are like, oh, your work's so good. And then someone says one negative thing. And that's the thing you remember. And so it's not anyone's fault, but it's the way that brands are so scared of pissing someone off, but they're missing the entire wider picture, right?
Yeah.
Someone said it the other day. It was like, imagine a football stadium and you have, 30,000 cheering fans, and then they have 5 people that are screaming insults. So if you think about it in like a football stadium, who are you going to pay attention to in that case, right? So on the brand side, we have to really be okay with kind of rethinking the way we're doing it. And then on the agency side, we have to push for smaller ideas in a way. I think like agencies, at least this is my experience, it's what I've seen, it's what I see creatives talk about online. Everyone wants to put in like the biggest, craziest idea, get the best director, do this award-winning thing. And that is cool and that is a certain kind of work. But if you want to do humor, you have to be okay with making stuff really small and try stuff out. And that's what I always push when we're making stuff. I'm always trying to make it as cheaply as possible, not because I'm a cheapskate, but because it forces constraints on us. And we learn by doing it smaller, and we get to we make it better by making it smaller sometimes and not trying to.
That's a great thought. Is it one of the reasons you also decided to hijack the Super Bowl this year, where I think that is ultimate, competition for who is the most funny, and in a way also who can afford the most to put in
Right.
one single night in advertising. So how is your thinking around this year's concept, which was definitely one of my top Super Bowl ads, even if it wasn't run in the TV as such?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, my personal opinion, I'm so exhausted by people trying to make stuff bigger and more expensive. And to your point, I mean, the Super Bowl is the prime example of that. And it just because your commercial cost $50 million to make doesn't mean it's better. And so, I mean, think the money that goes into this stuff just for a 30-second spot was over $7 million this year. So you're just already in for $7 million. Then you're paying for the agency to probably develop that for, I mean, some people, you start in July. I've started in July working on Super Bowl spots. So you're like, wow, the next 7 months of my life is Super Bowl. So all the whatever production.
Every second that needs at least one celebrity, some of them even, a couple of them.
Yeah. So I mean, some of the spots you saw this year literally were, tens of millions of dollars, easy, right? So we ran our own spot actually 2 years ago. That was kids. It looked like a beer commercial. It was just kids drinking beer.
Yeah, remember that.
Yeah, and that was great. And it ended up, and we bought it in a way that we didn't have to do a national buy. It's a complicated media thing, but basically we did the media buy smarter, so we didn't have to sink all this money. It was recently on this list of it was like Adweek's top 20 most groundbreaking Super Bowl spots, and it was funny because we were looking at it, and we were like, I guarantee this was the cheapest one to produce of anything on this entire list. Even they had the Coinbase QR code that was bouncing around the screen.
Yeah.
Which obviously, like, I actually think it costs I imagine that actually cost them more money than you suspect to make that. But then on top of that, they had to pay agencies, and they had to, there was all this stuff. For us, it's us producing it ourselves, in-house, developing it all. So that cost of that was very small. But So anyway, that's kind of the precursor. Looking at this year, we were considering running a spot, and then we were like, $7 million. Is this even worth it? How can we justify this to ourselves? And then that quickly turned into this conversation of like, well, if you really think about it, in terms of just pure eyeballs, our cases just being in store, the amount of traffic you get into a grocery and retail stores on a weekly basis is probably even more than the Super Bowl. And we looked at it, and it was about, and this is conservative, about 200 million potential impressions just from like walking the grocery stores of our top retailers, right? That would see our cases. So, so the whole idea was, instead of buying a spot, why don't we sell something that is potentially even bigger, which is a ad on the side of our cases. Because we always reserve one. It's actually pretty cool. We always reserve one side of our cases for just a cool piece of art. We work with artists that we like, and literally the panels serve no purpose other than being a really neat piece of art, and people cut them out and collect them all the time. We'd never done anything with that before on purpose because we wanted to preserve that, but we said, for this one time, what if we went ahead and sold it off, and not just sold it, but actually put it up on eBay and let people duke it out to see how much it actually is worth.
So how many different companies applied, and who is the lucky winner?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact number of different people who bid, but we got over 200 legitimate bids on it. And the price went, and it was a week-long auction, and the price went up and up. I mean, I have to pull the number, but we calculated recently the number of total, let me see if I can pull it up because it's actually good. The number of total
like bids altogether.
If you added it all up, what it would have cost, and it was like, oh man, I'll have to find it, but it was totaled up. It was like millions of dollars.
More than million, definitely.
It was like $34 million. I forget exactly what it was, but
crazy.
It was a really crazy amount of people that were, it's like the total number that people were willing to put up for it.
So instead of spending 7 million, you actually managed to earn or at least cover the expense for producing the campaign.
Yeah, we ended up making the winning bid was from Coinbase for $500,114, so $500,000. Of the side of a run of our boxes to do whatever they want with it, which was cool. And the video we made to promote the whole thing cost around $5,000 to make, so it was an ROI of 10,000%.
Oh my god! Sounds like an FE golden case to me.
Yeah, and and that wasn't really the point. The point of it was kind of just to poke some fun at the Super Bowl and just see what happens, and as like a little experiment. But it's cool, and the thing that Coinbase has made is really neat. And again, they made it look like a piece of art that they're running on the side of our box. So yeah, I think everyone's kind of winning out of this.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so what do you think about all the copycats? I mean, nothing unusual. I think if somebody is very successful, there will be brands following, and like I've seen this not beer, American sparkling water, and I've seen this Spirit spring water kind of referencing on vodkas. Then I saw Evil Juice, even in Vienna shop, even using the skull illustration on its cans. So it's I think it's hard to imagine, even closer, packaging and the whole concept to liquid this and Evil Drink and other ones. So, what's your take on all of these, copycats?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really pay much attention to competitors. Our focus is, and I wouldn't really call them competitors. I would say we don't really pay attention to what anybody else is doing. I think, our whole stance is we want to do what feels right and fun to us. And if people want to try to photocopy that and do a version of that, it may be hard for them because the thing we're making is literally like coming out of us, and so it's sort of authentic and organic, and we're doing it as it kind of comes out of us. So yeah, to do a copycat is difficult, and again, like, I mean, the good thing is, look, we have all these we have people excited about canned water and about getting rid of plastic. So at the end of the day, it's good for everybody. And then you have the flip side, you have all these other, brands that are even bigger than us that are starting to at least say that they're putting water in aluminum. They're it's easy to kind of like trot out like, here's an aluminum bottle. Yeah, we're still gonna make 99% plastic bottles, but at least we made this can. But again, we're putting pressure on everyone to try to change what they're doing, and so it's cool to see that it's catching on, honestly.
Yeah. So you are vice president of marketing, and you have your own in-house team. Can you shortly describe, like, what's the size of the team? Maybe what are the talent, the roles in your in-house discipline?
Yeah. So we have a wider team. I'm actually the VP of creative, and then I have the VP of marketing, and we have
All right.
we have a lot of disciplines on that we work with, because we also have a big merch business that is extremely successful. We have a lot of packaging and design needs, so we have a design department. We have like experiential marketing that does a lot of events. So we have a team like that, but for the most part, we're a pretty close, tight-knit team of just the amount of people that we want. We're it's a good size where everybody has a really specific role and everyone's really part of it. So it's not again, I'm not digging on agencies, but you kind of are. You see sometimes where it's easy to have bigger is better, and you have this big department with all these people that you can throw on something. And again, I think it's good to keep it tight, because then it's like, it's on us to figure it out. We can't depend on anyone else. So yeah, we concept most of the ideas ourselves internally. We write them. We have a production team in-house called Death Machine. So we don't just have the ideas, we also turn around and then shoot them all ourselves, which gives us complete creative control, gives us financial control. So there's no middlemen involved. And then I've now gotten to it where I will direct or co-direct with my executive producer as well. So the two of us work together to direct it. So we don't even need directors that often, to get like, you get the treatment from a director and you're asking for their vision. And what was happening a lot of times was, it was like, well, I don't need the director's treatment or vision, because I know what it needs to be. Like, we know exactly what it is. I just need someone to turn the cameras on and capture it. So we kind of have like that's how we kind of started to produce it all ourselves, and now directing it all ourselves as well. So yeah, it's the cool thing is we see it from start to finish, and everyone plays a really integral role. And then also, we have post-production, so we edit it all ourselves. We work with our editor. It's kind of seamless and easy across all the pieces.
Do you test or the ideas, or do you use any kind of research or help of data in your process of deciding what's next? And
yeah, it's a good question. The answer is yes and no. We test by pushing it live and seeing how it does, right? And so, like I said before, it's like, can we make stuff fast and cheap and often, and then put it out there, and then we go, oh, that worked. I wonder why that worked. We just did this big collaboration with this cosmetic brand called Elf. It was for this corpse paint set that exploded on TikTok and Instagram. Got like 24 million views in like almost the first day. Just all these reaction videos. I mean, it went nuts. And we thought it would do pretty well. We didn't want to say that out loud. We were like, beforehand, we were like, we think this is going to do well, but we don't want to get our hopes up. We'll see. And then it was cool to see that it was so well received. But I think for us, there's a lot of lessons looking back at like, okay, why did that thing work so well? And we, of course, engineer things to be as successful as possible. But we're like, okay, wow, this really had this big nostalgia factor. It was this really extremely visual thing with the corpse paint that we designed to have something super visual that would stop everyone in their feed. There are all these pieces to it that we'd kind of put in there, but we get the feedback afterwards and realize, okay, this worked. We can take away pieces from this. And then sometimes we put out stuff, like we put out another video we did a couple days ago. It was lower, much less expensive to make and faster and cheaper and everything. We put it out and we thought it was going to do okay, and it didn't do so well, but we've learned lessons from that as well.
So it's real-time testing and real-time data that you basically
because
gather.
I mean, that's the realest data, right? It's not like asking someone to check what they think of this ad that they've seen. It's like, did people share it? Did people comment on it? Did it have this many views? You know, so that is, you can't fake that data. So that's kind of how we look at it. And of course we do have a look at, you know, we have data that's backing a lot of our wider decisions and you know, the bigger things we do that go into it. But from like a creative standpoint, it's kind of a lot of experience and gut. And does it make us laugh? Cool. That's a pretty good test group. It made us laugh. We thought it was pretty dumb. And then we also did this other thing previously that was kind of like this, so we think it might do well.
Yeah, you mentioned the collabs with other brands and also different personalities and comedians. So, either any kind of again criteria? How do you choose you know, whom to collaborate with? How do you find them?
Yeah, it's sort of one of two things. I think it either has to make a lot of sense or it has to make no sense, right?
Nothing in the middle.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Because it's like we get to work with great comedians who are just a pleasure to work with. They're so great and generous with their time and talents. And so, or, you know, musicians, we've done stuff with Travis Barker and Metallica, to name a few, and they're also great too. And so like those things, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. That feels like that's kind of spot on. And then we'll go off and we're like, but what would be really funny if we did? And that's like, you know, doing something with Elf Cosmetics or Martha Stewart or, you know, all these other, we launched a line of underwear with a brand here in the US called MeUndies. So we're always kind of like looking for opposite ends of the spectrum, because I think the more we do in the stuff that makes sense, the funnier it is when we go over here and do something else that doesn't make sense. And the more we do something that doesn't make sense, then we can come back over here and do something that makes sense.
Balance out a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And they both provide different kind of comedic opportunities, you know? Yeah. So that's kind of the way we look at it. And, you know, the great thing is, we genuinely have a good product, I think, that people really like and a brand that people like. So, usually the conversations are pretty easy when we want to talk to someone and they're like, yeah. And I like to think of it as sort of Saturday Night Live. I don't know if people know that there, but it's kind of like in the US, it's a long running sketch comedy program weekly that has a guest host.
Yeah.
And so it all kind of every week the program changes based on who the guest host is, and usually it's an actor or actress, but sometimes it's an athlete or, you know, someone that like doesn't have a traditional kind of performance background. And I think we like to think of ourselves a little bit like that program, where we have this platform of liquid death and we have this kind of world of chaos we are creating, and we can invite different people in to play along on that stage with us. And so for bringing a comedian or whatever, it's like that's a really easy, comfortable place to be in. Bring in somebody else who maybe doesn't do comedy so much, but there's a really, but because we've already made the stage, it's really easy for someone to walk in and have fun and show a different side of themselves than what they might normally do. And so that's kind of the space we want to make with the brand, where we're just having fun with everyone and pulling in pop culture and poking at it and having fun with it.
Listen, yeah, it sounds like everything is fun and entertaining and easy and just, cheap ads, viral videos. Are there any struggles, challenges you have besides all the kind of success that we can see mostly?
We have too many ideas.
Okay. So overwhelm of like with the plans, with these future scenarios to go with.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be glib, but yeah, I mean, we have so many things we want to make, and there are only so many days on a calendar that we have that we can put them out, or so there's I mean, if anything, it's like there's so much going on that's the biggest thing is
Yeah.
making sure we can find time to bring all the stuff we want to do to life. So that's kind of the best problem to have.
But one thing is when your client is killing your babies or your ideas. Like if
Right.
you would work with an agency, so in your case, it's killing your own small babies coming from in-house team. Is it hard to do? Is it like people treat it as a part of the process?
It's not even it's not even how the process works, because it's not like we sit around and work on a big thing and then like put a presentation together and then pitch it. It's more like we all, again, we liken it kind of to like a writer's room in television or something, where we're all sort of, in a virtual room, sometimes in a real room, and we're just kind of kicking around ideas. And then there's usually we're like, that's a funny idea. I like that. What if we kind of did this? And then usually we kind of just all collectively arrive at an idea that we all think is the best. And it's not this process of like, we don't like this one, or this one doesn't work. It's kind of this collective, like, that feels like the right idea. And it's not even like where we have to write scripts to it. It's like we have the idea, this feels right, and we feel confident that we can turn it into a really funny video if we know that the kernel is there. From there, it's just writing a bunch of funny jokes on top of it and bring it to life. But the way that I've come to think of it is, I've talked about this in other places before. It's like Liquid Death is almost this character that we're sort of writing this three-dimensional real world show with, as it kind of going through the world and interacting with different things. And so when you get in the headspace of a character, it's really easy to write for, because you know them inside and out. You know their motivations, and you know how they talk and how they'd approach a situation. And so often for things we want to do, there's kind of a right answer. It's like, oh, the character would do this. And so it's like, what would Liquid Death do is a kind of almost the question we ask ourselves, rather than like, what could we do? Right. And it's like, what could we do? There's a lot of things that we could do. And that's I think traditionally how I always approached coming up with ideas. But versus now, it's like, oh, what would Liquid Death do? And there's kind of a right answer for that. And a great example of that is the elf thing. We got approached by them and we had a couple chats, and I was like, man, if we're gonna do something with them, it feels like it has to be makeup. And how would we make makeup? We would just make a corpse paint set, because that's so stupid. But it's sort of like it's the thing that we would do.
Yeah.
And we arrived at that idea. I mean, like, I don't know if it was like within like minutes, but it was almost the first idea. It was like, oh, corpse paint. And and so sometimes it's you always get dinged on like first thought ideas, but sometimes I think for us, because you're already bringing all this stuff together that shouldn't be together. So the first thought might actually be the simplest, most elegant, funniest thought. So that's part of it, is like not overthinking it, not over strategizing, not going too far, just letting.
Not these like dedicated creative, sessions where the team meets, I don't know, weekly, or how do you organize this kind of coming up with the next, thought for the content?
We have we'll just sit down with the team for an hour and we'll just kind of like jam out some ideas, and out of that we'll come out with a number of ideas that we think have some merit, and then we'll meet as kind of a bigger marketing team of the VPs, and we just kind of we'll bring it there. And again, it's a very open session where we kind of are like, hey, here's some ideas that we had, and then we'll kind of do that process again, but much more condensed, and say like, oh, that idea feels really good, or not sure any of these, but this kind of has this other idea here. So it's sort of just it's a very loose thing. And then, but out of that we go, okay, we'll spend 10 minutes talking about something. We're like, okay, that feels like a really fun idea. Let's just go do that. And then we go off and do it.
Do you also play the promotions game, like the discounts and buy 3 receive the 4th free of charge? Kind of, are you part of that kind of typical retail promotions as well, or you're like 99% focused on the brand building and content?
I'm not as involved in the retail side of things, so there may be some of that goes on.
All right.
I know definitely don't do it as much as most brands do. But yeah, I mean, my focus is to make the brand as compelling and fun as possible. Yeah.
What about other brands? I mean, maybe you like, if we talk about entertainment and the power of humor, what comes to your mind, or maybe some brands that you admire? Of course, besides Liquid Death, that's probably number 1 for you and me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm as big of a fan of Liquid Death as anyone else. It's fun to work on something that you're just kind of it's inspiring to see all the stuff that people here do and that fans do with it and all that stuff. So I genuinely love getting to see that. And then I think, like I said, I mean, I really don't pay that much attention to what other brands are doing. I think like I got to meet I'm going to mess up his title, but he's the head of brand or something at Oatly, Armando Turco. He's he kind of runs all the creative and marketing over at Oatly.
Yeah.
And they do what I love is that they're kind of deconstructing marketing in the same way that we are, or rather in a different way. They're kind of taking a similar approach to deconstructing it, and then they're kind of reconstituting it in what makes sense for them. I love that. And when we met, we just literally met up for a drink like a year ago or something when I was in New York on a whim. And it was amazing how similar we found that our processes and our people were, and the way that we operated. And I think both of us were like, we had no blueprint for this. We were just kind of been making it up on our own.
Yeah.
But we both arrived at a very similar sort of internal thing that we're doing. It was kind of like looking into a mirror. So that was really cool.
I think tactically, maybe they are more kind of working with the copyright or the text as kind of almost a hero in like so many outdoor ads, especially. And Liquid Death, I think, is more working with the visually stunning, entertaining content. So it's in a way you're both challenging the categories and definitely using the humor as such. But I think the way how you approach the piece of communication and content, I think they're quite distinctive from each other, definitely.
Yeah. So they're doing great. I mean, I think all the stuff that Maximum Effort is having a lot of fun. That's Ryan Reynolds' agency. I have my really good friends. I know several people over there. But again, they're kind of having fun with breaking down what an ad should be, and so, but then also, just other stuff. Like I said, we're curious about other interesting things in the world. Um, been rewatching a lot of, oh man, I don't even know if you could find this where you guys are, but like Nathan Fielder is this bizarre, I don't even know how to describe him. He kind of does these like not hidden cameras. It's sort of very extremely dry stuff. It's not even a prank show. It's like he used to have this show called Nathan for You, where he would give small businesses business advice, but
Yeah.
it was terrible. And like,
I have to check this out, man.
yeah, it's called Nathan for You. And he would just give like it'd be like the worst advice, but they would go ahead and do it. And like one time it was like, oh, a pizza delivery service, they offered free, it was like delivery in 35 minutes. And he was like, I want to cut it down to 8 minutes and guarantee if you don't get your pizza in 8 minutes, you'll get a free pizza. And he's like, I can't do that. There's no way. And he's like, that's okay, because the second pizza we're going to give them is 2 inches.
Tiny.
So they already had these like tiny pizza. I mean, it was just all these terrible ideas, but treated very straight. And that's kind of some of the stuff that we do. And I kind of am realizing that now, a lot of our inspiration is stuff we consumed before, and we're kind of have pulled out of the recesses of stuff that inspired us. So it's like Nathan for You and Jackass and all these, like, all the stuff we grew up on is the stuff we kind of draw from. We reference movies all the time, we reference shows and different things all the time as like reference points for something that we're going to want to make, because we're looking towards entertainment. We're not looking towards like another ad that this thing is kind of like, right?
What's your position in taking a stand kind of in more sensitive or even political issues? And we know that, president elections are not far away. And so is there any hope that Liquid Death can help to avoid another evil, to be elected? I know that Taylor Swift is doing, using her, impact and power and fans. Like what's your position here? Do you kind of avoid at all cost, or there might be the issues that you would jump in?
Sure. I mean, the way we look at it is no one actually cares what Liquid Death thinks about anything. No one, the same way that no one cares what a random cracker brand is tweeting about in support of or against whatever. I think this idea that brands have to take stands on current event issues is kind of fooling ourselves that anyone cares or that that's going to make an impact. I think the heart is in the right spot.
Yeah.
But for us, it's like, no, we are so focused on longer term things, on, again, giving people healthier choices, making sustainability an easier thing that we can all access. That for us, anything that takes away from that focus, it doesn't make sense. But I do think in general, like part of the ethos of what we're doing is it's kind of like, in a subtle way, calling out bullshit wherever it exists, right? It's like the bullshit in the marketing complex, the bullshit in the fact that everything has to be in plastic. It's sort of, we're calling this stuff out again, through humor, not in an aggressive way. But we did do one thing that was like kind of political on the last election cycle. So about a year and a half ago here in the States, there was a law in the state of Georgia here, which is actually where I grew up, that was, you couldn't pass out food or water to people standing in line waiting to vote within several hundred feet of a polling place. And the issue with that is that in the access to voting in brown and black communities here in the US the access is much more restricted than in other communities, right? And so you have these polling places where people are standing in line for 5 hours, 8 hours at a time, just trying to vote, and no one was legally able to give them water. And so we actually got contacted by a non-political organization there that said, "Hey, we would love to pass out some liquid death." And we were like, "Hey, we can do that. What if we also made something that called attention to this idiotic law that we passed?" So we did actually do something. We made this really funny video where it was like the Georgia election kit, and it was basically like, "We're saving democracy," and it was just a fanny pack with an American flag on it that came with a can of liquid death, and we gave them out free for anyone in the state of Georgia. And so we made a funny video, but the point was to kind of call out the stupid law. But again, that was more about like, it was kind of on the edge of politics. But again, for anyone that looks at that, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. That is a objectively dumb thing that I think we can all get behind. So it wasn't like taking a political stand. It was more about calling something out with humor that we thought was dumb.
Yeah, I mean, it was also kind of directly connected to the product itself, right?
Right, exactly. That's why we're like, we have. It makes sense that we can comment on this because it is connected to who we are. It's not like, again, we're some random brand that's like making a statement about something. It's like, again, heart is in the right place when you're doing that, but like no one cares, and it's probably not even helpful.
Yeah. So I think the last question for today for the podcast would be like, what would the ultimate success look like for you, like and in connection to liquid death? Like, what's the moonshot goal if you have one together with Mike and other leaders of the brand?
I mean, we're just plugging along, having fun. Again, for us, it's about giving people healthier and more sustainable choices and making people laugh. And if we're doing that, I think we're succeeding. So, it's not a whole lot more than that. Obviously, we have things we want to do, but at the end of the day, if we're focused on that mission, anything else that comes after that is going to be a result of that. And
yeah, and I can only wish to have it as long as it's possible to really see the brand flourishing and becoming a very sustainable business as well. Despite all the critics, I remember even a year ago there was a lot of this kind of Forbes community was talking about how sustainable the company is. And of course, I believe that the brand, like the power and the influence that you already have, and like the magnetism around the brand, it can only expand and go further. And we are lucky to have it in Riga here in Riga and Tallinn. I think it was in these candy pop stores. You can finally buy liquid death water. Yeah, so candy and water.
I mean, I guess I'll like leave you like. It's funny that you talk about critics because, man, even when I joined, I mean, from the very beginning, people were like, no one's ever going to buy this. No one's ever going to.
This is fake. This is a joke.
Which is part of the magic of it. But even more people would be like, no one's going to drink water out of a can. That was always the thing. When I joined, again, less than 3 years ago, I'd have to get on calls and be like, "Hi, I'm from Liquid Death. Do you know what liquid death is?" Most people didn't. I'd have to explain it. And this is like 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, which is crazy. And people would be like, "Oh, what? No one's going to drink water out of a can. Like, that's just not a thing that people are going to do," which is hilarious because you think of all the, again, sodas and beers and energy drinks that people with all kinds of crazy chemicals and stuff in it that you drink out of a can that you can't see, right?
Exactly.
But people be like, no one's ever going to drink water out of the can. And then there was literally this inflection point, maybe about 1.5 years into it, where I'd get on calls and people would be like, "Oh man, liquid death, water in a can. It's such an obvious idea. I can't believe I didn't think of that. And it's
and it took like 4 or 5 years to actually reach that kind of state,
yeah.
right?
But it's so funny that it just flipped from people going, no way, to like, oh my God, it's so obvious. It was like people were like, it was almost as if like anybody could have come up with this thing, right? But that always, I like to think of it. It's like every idea is dumb until it's not, and that's always there are so many things that people shot down and poo-pooed from the beginning, that then there's a point where it's just the thing. I mean, a great example of that is if you remember the iPad, when that came out. I mean, everyone made fun. I did. I was like, "What is this thing? This doesn't make any this giant screen." And now you look, and it's literally in every coffee shop. It's the way you pay at every coffee shop. It's all of our moms have it reading, doing games on it. I mean, it's ubiquitous. So that is the thing, is that any idea that challenges what exists that no one has challenged before, of course it's dumb, because how dare you try something in a space that's
new,
something new, right?
So thank you so much, Andy, for having amazing talk, and cheers to the optimists. I think you need a lot of optimism to survive the critics and hates. And I really wish you all the best. And I'm your biggest fan, and will definitely keep following all the new campaigns and content that Liquid Days is putting out. So thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Yeah, more stuff to come for sure. So keep an eye out.
Thank you everyone for listening. This was an interview with Andy Pearson from Liquid Death, and this is Baltic Brand Talks podcast, and this was the first out of many amazing interviews we have planned for you, and I can't wait for you to listen and share many other stories and conversations we are going to have as marketing directors, CMOs, brand directors, and creatives from Baltics and different global brands. So, hope to see you soon.